Regenerative farming is nothing new. If anything, the way we farm today is just a temporary fad in comparison to how humans have been doing it for centuries before. And for the past 80 years, we've held on to pesticides and chemicals, believing that that was the only answer to feeding billions of people. And despite the damage, the erosion, and the environmental issues that come with our chemical reliance, they've been championed and pushed upon us to such a degree and for so long that the idea of doing it any other way has become an alien concept to us. A mass survey in the late 1990s was conducted on food production farms in Africa. The situation was becoming so dire that the poor soil conditions were literally leading to rising death tolls from starvation and malnutrition. IUCN and the UNFCCC high-level champions took the results of their studies that proved that the commercial way of farming was the leading cause, and they started educating farmers and implementing old techniques again. It didn't just go a long way to fixing poor soil conditions. Farms were producing more than they ever produced before. Then the 2000s came around, and a renewed interest in regenerative farming and organic products came with it. The interest of big companies like Starbucks and Walmart kept the regenerative locomotor going strong. Businesses of this size weren't interested because it was a fad they wanted to jump on and make a quick few bucks from it. No, they were seeing how the destruction was putting their supply lines in jeopardy. In the long run, regenerative farming is going to be much more sustainable and reliable than their current sources. They would rather buy from land that has the potential to supply them for another 100 years than land that is going to erode into oblivion in the next generation. That's where alcohol comes in. It's being used to lay the groundwork for scientists to study the soil, the environment, and the scale of production when regenerative and conventional farming are put head-to-head with each other, this time on a global scale. Let's have a look at 4 of the companies that are paving the way for the change that farms and the alcoholic industry so desperately needs. Johnnie Walker, Captain Morgan, Bailey's, Don Julio Tequila, Guinness, Hartenberg Wineries, and Kostin Corva Vodka are just a small handful of the masses that are going clean. But a few are offering up their land to be the baseline for studies that will continue for at least the next 10 years. Johnnie Walker, Don Julio, and Guinness are the biggest names in the booze business making the commitment. They fall under the mass conglomerate Diageo. They also supply rum, vodka, and liqueur to 180 countries worldwide. They're slowly incorporating their other brands under the regenerative umbrella too. But Diageo is doing more than just turning its back on pesticides. They're doing some of their best work with drones. By using drones to remotely identify plants in distress, animal invasions, and direct video footage to study, they've cut down their vehicular exhaust emissions by half. This drone system also allowed them to determine which times in the course of the day were the best and most efficient ways to give their crops water. This reduced their water usage and helped avoid erosion by watering before winds could come in to blow away the dry layer of topsoil. They aren't just being more economical with their water usage in the dry Mexican deserts, they're utilizing water to hold the soil, its nutrients, and their crops in place. Diageo wants to reduce water usage by 40% and cut down on carbon emissions by 30% by the year 2030. Then there's Devon. A UK-based wine, beer, gin, and cider manufacturer. They've been quietly moving towards regenerative farming for years now. Almost all of their produce needed for the production of beverages is sourced from regenerative farms. The company's sheer size and impact on the market encouraged other farms outside of their supply line to drop their conventional practices in hopes of getting their feet in the door of the organic movement. Without any whistles and parades, Devon has turned the produce farming community in Britain around completely. And they aren't just stopping at soil health. Even the fruit and vegetable pulp that would have ended up in landfills after the distillation process was completed is being distributed to livestock farms. They're keeping the Brits fed by feeding their livestock and giving them a cold one to wash that good farm-grown banger down with. But the problems don't stop with carbon emissions and soil health on the land. The factories, distilleries, and plants aren't much better off. The Beverage Industry Environmental Roundtable, or BEER for short, conducted research into carbon emissions and water waste that came from these distilleries. They found that most of the carbon emissions were not coming from the farms themselves. They were being produced by the production of the glass bottles that the beer and wines were packaged in. And the distilleries themselves were using 12 times the amount of water that the farms were using to grow the products that were being distilled. These studies were earth-shattering. We've always been quick to point the finger at the farmers, but the factories were just as guilty, if not more. But their investigation did come with some good news. Organically grown produce just makes better-tasting beverages. The flavor and quality organic produce brings to the final product is superior, and they beat out their competitors under strict critic evaluation every single time. Whiskey, wine, and beer come with a great deal of pride, and if a distiller can make his product better, they're going to jump at the chance to achieve a higher quality product. Beer took the massive amounts of acidic water that came from the factories to create an ingenious solution to the expensive process of purifying the waste at water treatment plants. They made sanitizer instead. The COVID pandemic was their inspiration, and if there's one good thing that came from that terrible time, it's this. And finally, Bacardi Inc. took converting waste into a usable product even further. They took their wastewater, spent grains, and beer loss that comes with every distillation process and turned it into 95% methane. This biogas production from waste is enough to power the facilities that make beer, and there's so much left over that it can even be extended to energy use outside of those facilities. This system has the potential to take a great deal of weight off the energy crisis. The only problem is that converting breweries into what are essentially energy plants is incredibly expensive. But Bacardi wants to make that cheaper too. They're actively turning their own centers into electrical plants while looking for ways to source cheaper materials and minimize the scale of machinery needed to make it happen. This is going to take a little time to perfect, but given the enormous strides they've been making and the huge costs and energy they'll be saving in the long run, we're sure that this project isn't going to lose steam anytime soon. Avocado toast came and went as trends do, but fine wine and a cold beer will never go out of style. That's where the genius lies. By taking a product like alcohol, the regenerative movement got itself a very powerful ally. German beer, South African wine, Mexican tequila, they aren't just popular at parties. Alcohol is ingrained in culture. It's got history and pride. And with it comes the support of the everyday consumer on a global scale. Wine and beer have been around since before agriculture was even invented. And if there's one product that will be championed until the end of time, it's going to be the fermented drinks that come with every culture and nation in every country across the world, and they will forever have a place on every table. From the land to the production line, alcohol is currently one of the biggest and most successful warriors in the organic and regenerative space, and they aren't stopping at solutions that will line their pockets alone. Their active changes in handling waste are going to make them one of the biggest producers of reusable energy, water, and food, all while protecting the soil and the future of the farmers on the land. Before you leave, don't forget to leave a like, to subscribe to the channel, and to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Every time you engage with the channel or share our videos, the importance of agricultural change just goes so much further. The farming community needs change. And the first step to making those necessary changes is by spreading the awareness as far and wide as we can. See you next week. Bye.